In 1775, Thomas Paine wrote a pamphlet stating that the freedoms of men can only be maintained by limiting the power of government. The pamphlet was called Common Sense, and today it still is common sense.
I'm Mark Zaccaria.
I'm April Girusso. This is Common Sense. Welcome back. Were you particularly taken by any landmark legislation that came out of the session of the General Assembly that just concluded? Neither were we. There is still plenty to talk about, though, as we dissect the proceedings so you can get a better look at the details that might have whizzed by in a blur as they actually took place in real time. So we'll report on the pistol permit that almost was. We'll cover the enormous amount of slack the Speaker just cut for all the registered sex offenders out there in TV land. And we'll also analyze the chances the GOP has to make some headway in accumulating seats for the next session. As usual, Common Sense will feature an in-depth interview conducted by State Representative Patricia Morgan. This week, Pat's guest in the information seat is her colleague, State Rep. Sherry Roberts. Together, they'll get into the details of what just happened up on Smith Hill. Fear not. Between segments of that serious inquiry, Mark and I will drop back in to ask the satiric question, are you kidding me? Finally, pundit Jeff Richard will wrap up the broadcast with his commentary on manners. To get all that started, let's look beneath the headlines of some of the top stories affecting Rhode Islanders today. Mark?
Thank you, April. It's summer, ladies and gentlemen, and the post-mortem on the recently concluded session of the Rhode Island General Assembly is in full flower. Now we hear all the gossip, recriminations, and analysis of procedural tactics that went on behind the scenes of the annual meltdown that is the closing of the legislative session. The tidbits are juicy and way too numerous to be completely covered in this short segment. So let me pick one fairly innocuous measure that had a lot more legs than anyone expected in the early hours of Saturday morning, while the bleary Solons were playing their annual game of Trade-a-Bill. As Kathy Gregg reported in the Providence Journal, the Ocean State very nearly got itself a new law easing the restrictions on permits to carry pistols. So much for Rhode Island as a liberal bastion. The bill to clear roadblocks from the arcane and iffy permitting process here was originally submitted by Democrat Charlene Lima in the House. Last March, it had been held for further study, usually the death sentence for a proposed law. On Final Friday, however, it seems the bill magically reappeared on the House floor and was quickly ushered through to a 60-12 vote in favor. According to Projo, Rep. Lima had also been assured that the votes existed in the Senate to bring this one all the way back from legislative oblivion. But just then, Senate President Teresa Paiva-Weed called 1-800-DIAL-A-COP. Before midnight, State Police Superintendent Colonel Stephen O'Donnell, Providence Police Chief Hugh Clemens, and chiefs of departments from all across the state turned late-night lobbyists to put the bite on their respective senators to kill the bill on the basis of fear and loathing of the Second Amendment rights. The outcome here was no surprise, of course. The fact that the bill came that close to enactment certainly is, though. We've long heard that there's a strong pro-life, pro-Second Amendment vein running through the Democratic Party here in Rhode Island. It may be that the blue-collar, family values, working men and women of the Democrat persuasion almost got their wish as this session came to its chaotic conclusion. If that's true, they may not be denied in the next session. By then, in fact, the legend of the Reagan Democrats may have already been replaced by an updated tale of the Trump Democrats. April?
Thanks, Mark. This is a year when names like those of Ray Gallison, John Carnevale, and Senator Pinecone have caused the pundits to wonder whether the stage is set for a Republican resurgence in the General Assembly. It is also a year when events like the forced passage of truck tolling has gotten voters on both sides of the aisle up off their seats to push back against what seems like an imperial legislature. Despite what journalists see as the alignment of the stars, there are a number of other forces that have to come together to make a wave election. Fundraising by the state party is one of them. The only real way the RIGOP can enforce compliance with its platform is by financial support to those candidates who have like beliefs already. Candidate recruitment is the other key process. There are only 60 Republican contenders for the 113 combined seats in the General Assembly. One of the reasons recruitment is so difficult is that many prospective candidates feel they can't win with an R next to their names. The good news there is that a number of candidates running as independents will caucus with the minority when they win. This year, there's another factor creating a headwind for the grand old party. There are at least 4 incumbent Republicans in the House and 1 in the Senate who are retiring from their chambers. One of these representatives, Doreen Costa, was first elected to House District 31 in 2010 and has confirmed that she will not run for re-election, but rather run for a town council seat in North Kingstown. Her explanation for this change is that she believes in term limits and has based her campaigns around that issue. Right from the beginning, she said that after 3 terms she would step aside, and she remained steadfast to her word. If only some of the career politicians in the state would appreciate the need for a steady stream of fresh thinking as Ms. Costa does. So nothing is easy for the loyal opposition this year, but that won't stop them from fighting every fight they can. Back to you, Mark.
Thanks again, April. During the last session of the Rhode Island General Assembly, both chambers addressed a curious loophole in the law requiring convicted sex offenders to register their status. A law has been on the books for some time requiring that designated sex offenders register with the police department in the town in which they live within 24 hours of taking up residence. There may not be 100% compliance with that requirement, but if it comes to light, there are criminal sanctions which come into play. There's an interesting loophole in this requirement, however, and it was first identified by the Alliance for Safe Communities. Executive Director Carolyn Medeiros pointed out that if an inmate of the ACI is released to a therapy center or a homeless shelter for transition, they are not going to a permanent residence. In practice, most such homeless pedophiles ignore the reporting requirement, either out of defiance or shame. A bill proposed in both the House and the Senate this past session would have added a requirement for the administration of the shelter or residence center to notify the authorities that there was now another designated sex offender living in their jurisdiction. The House version was held for further study, despite the fact that Speaker Mattiello had been vocal about the problem in the past. 3 years ago, he had promised a citizens group in Cranston that he would institute a cap of just 5 registered sex offenders at Harrington Hall in the city at any one time. The latest number reported by that facility was 49 as the total population of those offenders today. So apparently Mr. Mattiello had a change of course. In the Senate, though, the companion bill, S-2319, received the attention of the Judiciary Committee there and emerged as a sub-A version. In the melee of Final Friday this year, that bill passed the Senate and was sent to the House. House leadership was unwilling to bring it to the floor, despite the fact that it simply corrects a defect in the existing statute. By House leadership, of course, I mean the Speaker. It's a mystery. Harrington House is in the Speaker's district. The presence of a large number of unreported sex offenders poses a direct problem to his own constituents. Halfway houses, homeless shelters, and residential treatment facilities have an administrative process for client intake in place. The proposed new law would only have required them to read one more field on the package they already receive from the agencies that refer their clients. It would have been easy to alert local departments to the exact size of the potential community policing challenge posed by a concentration of these offenders. Now, though, it will be at least another year before municipal authorities and local neighbors have any hope of being notified of the size of this population as is required by law. Ready, fire, aim. Or have I missed something here? April?
No, Mark, I think you summed it up pretty well. It's a mystery. There's no mystery about what's coming up next on Common Sense, though. Just before we go to the first segment of this week's in-depth interview, you can sit back and enjoy a little dark humor at the expense of our political system. That's right. Stand by for this week's first Are You Kidding Me segment.
Rhode Island has often been cited for the lopsided authority accorded the Speaker of the House in relation to the Senate and the Governor. The state constitution clearly provides that the Speaker be the most powerful figure in the political structure of government. Each year we see example after example of how that fact skews the legislature's treatment of even critical new measures. Despite all that, the quaint local custom remains that it ain't law till the Speaker says it's law. Are you kidding me? As the final session of this General Assembly ground to a close in the early hours of June 18th, this point was made again by the current occupant of the office of Speaker. A comprehensive package of 6 criminal justice reform bills died while waiting for action by the lower chamber. The individual measures had been crafted over a year's time by the Rhode Island Justice Reinvestment Working Group, a task force created by an executive order from Governor Raimondo. It was composed of a diverse panel of lawmakers, judges, agency leaders, mental health advocates, community groups, and others. Starting in July of last year, the panel took its work seriously and crafted an interlocking series of measures aimed at modernizing our state's treatment of criminal sentencing and rehabilitation. On June 14th, the Senate passed all 6 pieces of legislation and sent them to the House. Then the governor, the Senate president, the working group, the House sponsor, the chair of the House Judiciary Committee, and other onlookers held their collective breath while awaiting the pleasure of the Speaker on the matter. Speculation abounds among Monday morning quarterbacks as to why Mr. Mattiello demurred. Was it the failure of the Senate to pass last-minute unrelated legislation of his to increase the authority of the State Board of Trustees for career and technical schools? Was it a public spanking for House sponsor, Representative Robert Craven? He had, after all, failed to deliver on his earlier promise to vote with the Speaker on the roadworks tolls. The real reason may never be known. The Speaker doesn't need a reason, no matter how much Rhode Island needs reform of its criminal justice system. Are you kidding me?
Welcome to Common Sense Rhode Island. This is a program where we try to make sense out of the policies that affect your life and come up with common sense solutions. I'm Representative Patricia Morgan, and today we have as our guest Representative Sherry Roberts, who represents District 29, which is Central Coventry and West Greenwich.
Correct.
Welcome.
Thank you, Patricia.
Well, thank you for coming. Sherry, you are now in the second year of your term, your first term.
Yes.
Any surprises? Anything that you think is different from what you were expecting when you got up to the State House?
Well, I did expect there would be corruption. We all know that there's a lot of corruption up there at the State House. But I think I'm a little surprised by the amount of undermining that goes on up there and just to what extent there is corruption in the many different, maneuvers that are going on up there, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's really disturbing to me, and I know to you, is that what's best for the common good, for the average family, doesn't get talked about very much up there.
No, I don't hear a lot of that.
No.
I mean, it seems like all I see is, this one's doing for this one. If you're willing to do this, we can negotiate and I'll pass your bill and I get this out of it. And I don't seem to hear too much about, what the people want.
Yeah, a lot of lobbyists, a lot of special interests, a lot of those insider deals that are going on all the time. You vote for this, I'll give you that kind of stuff. Of course, I think about the toll law in relation to that. Clearly a bad law for the average family out there. $45 million annual tax increase.
Yes.
Yet it got done.
Yeah, because they had their own agenda. They knew in advance before that vote ever came to the floor what was going to happen, or it wouldn't have been brought to the floor for a vote. And that's something that a lot of citizens of Rhode Island just don't realize, is that a lot of things don't get to the floor unless they have it pre-planned that it's going to pass with enough votes, regardless of what the Republicans want. If they say, no, we don't want that, well, they really don't care. If they have enough votes, they're going to pass what they want, and that's it.
Yeah, and there's not a lot of discussion. There's not a lot of, I think of our founding fathers, and I'm sure that we would have wanted us to debate, have a deliberative body where all the sides of an issue were debated thoroughly, and it just doesn't get to happen.
That's not the way it seems that it works here in Rhode Island now.
No, the toll law, again, I'll bring that up. It's something that's really going to be a weight on Rhode Island families, consumers, on our economy. And yet, when we were trying to get the information, I mean, just going to DOT, and I know you were helping me with that, when we put in the access to public records requests, unheard of, that we have to put in a formal request to get information, and yet we had to under this administration. And the documents were not forthcoming, not easy to access, not easy to understand. I know you fought really hard with me against the toll law. You actually went through your district in the fall and asked the people of your district what they thought. Is that right?
Yeah, well, yes, I did. I did can't think of the right word right now.
A flyer?
Yeah, it was a survey.
Okay.
Couldn't think of the right word.
Survey.
It was a survey just to ask them about what some of their concerns were, and I did have a chance to talk to many people, not everybody, unfortunately, but I did my best to get out there and find out, because to me, I really did when I ran. It was for the people. I think they realize that now. I think they realize I'm not just one of those politicians who say one thing and go do another. So I'm hearing a lot of people that are happy with the work that I'm doing, and they're very appreciative and they're thankful. And I just have to say, I have one of the best districts. I don't care what anyone says.
Oh, no, I do. I do.
But
when you did this survey, what kinds of things did you ask? What kinds of things were you hearing from your constituents?
many different things. There were a few different things on there. You know, obviously, people they want less taxes. They want less bureaucracy. You know, less regulating. Of course, small businesses are hurt. We know that. So we definitely have to work on some more of that. And I know there's been some ridiculous legislation that's gone up there, has been put up there with the 2 weeks advance work schedule type thing. We know that's going to hurt businesses. It's just ridiculous. I think that was something personal that whoever the legislator was that submitted that, it's probably a personal thing. That's what it smells of to me.
Well, whether it was personal or not, the problem with that was it was going to hurt jobs.
Correct.
I'm sure that was something that you heard from your constituents.
Absolutely.
They are really afraid of their jobs being permanent, of their jobs paying the bills.
Yes, yeah, they're concerned about that. They don't like it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I mean, there's a real uncertainty. I hear it like you. I mean, they always do focus on the taxes because taxes is a huge item out of everybody's paycheck. And that paycheck isn't growing. So as taxes go up, it's taking a bigger and bigger percentage of their available spending money.
Yes.
It's really been very, very tough for families. You have been a strong voice for the people of your district, fighting for them against the tolls, against that job-killing bill. Makes you a target in this coming election.
Oh, yes, one of the top targets from what I hear.
I hear you're one of the top targets, too.
There is a consequence when you go up there and fight for the people and work against the will of the entrenched people in there who are not working for the people, and they will try to silence you and they will try to take you out. They will do whatever it takes to get you out, no matter what. So it's going to be a tough race. I'm aware of that. People are warning me that, you know, I'm going to be pretty much slammed and made to look bad in the public, and that's fine. You know, I guess I'm doing my job, so that's okay with me.
Well, I guess if you, it's a credit to you that you do have opposition, because it means you're doing something right.
Thank you.
Right? Especially in our Rhode Island system of government. If you're not having a challenge, it probably means that you're going along to get along. And that's not been good for the average families in Rhode Island.
No.
I mean, when we look at our jobs climate, at our business climate, at the overregulation, at our really high property taxes, that's because too many people have been saying yes too long without looking at its effect on average families. Brings us to Central Coventry Fire District. I know you've been really helping me with that. That's a fight that's been going on for 5 years. And they are having a meeting here pretty soon. Do you know when that meeting is?
No, I don't. I'm going to find out.
Thursday, May 5th, I can
Okay.
tell you that.
Okay.
They're having their, it's not an annual meeting. They actually only passed a 6-month budget, so this is to come back and pass another 6-month budget. But there are some good things to report in Central Coventry.
Yes, the taxes are being reduced, and I had a hand in that, working behind the scenes. That's what people probably don't realize, but working with the board. And we anticipate that they will probably have another tax decrease.
Yes, sometime in the future.
Yes.
It's hard when you're already getting a too high bill to say, the bill comes in the door and people are just saying, oh God, another bill. But the truth is it has gone down 20%. And because of the work that board has done with your and my help, they've been able to restructure stuff. They're paying off debt. It's good news for the people in
Yes.
Central Coventry.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, listen, we're going to take a break and we're going to be right back.
I'm a little sister. When I was a young, impressionable child, I learned how to act and behave from those around me. Obviously, my parents were probably the biggest factors, but there was one other person in my household that was arguably my biggest influence. My big sister. Little kids always want to follow around their older siblings and act like they do and be as cool as we think our older siblings are. It's so important for a big sister to be a good example within families like mine, but also in the grander scheme. Like politics. We have had a lot of upsetting reports recently about the behavior of our state officials, so we need their big sister, federal officials, to demonstrate how to run the government. Oobly. Are you kidding me? Yeah. The problem with that is that not every big sister is a good influence. Sometimes federal officials make questionable life decisions. Take, for example, the recent social meeting between Attorney General Loretta Lynch and former President Bill Clinton at the Phoenix airport. You'd think it wouldn't be such a big deal for high-ranking government officials to have a short how do you do when they happen to cross paths, but when one of those officials is currently investigating the wife of another, it seems like an odd choice to stop and hang. Lynch said that her meeting with Clinton was unplanned and that the conversation stuck to personal matters like Mr. Clinton's new grandchild and each of their various travels. But right now the FBI is investigating Mrs. Clinton, so you'd think that there would be a conflict of interest between the one who could potentially prosecute her and the one who is married to her. You're both lawyers. Well, Bill used to be. You know that the best way to interact with each other is to keep from making eye contact so that the other person thinks you didn't even notice them at all. This definitely isn't some sort of political scandal, but it goes toward the judgment of both people involved, who happen to be highly recognizable, powerful people in our government. Bill might even be the First Lady one day. If our federal officials make silly little mistakes like this and don't hold themselves to the highest standards of professionalism, how are the officials of Little Rhode going to learn? If we can't fix things internally, then having that outside influence of a big sister might be the only way we're going to shape up the state. And that's what we want, right, people? To shape up the state? Are you kidding me?
Welcome back to Common Sense. I'm Representative Patricia Morgan, and we have with us today Representative Sherry Roberts from Central Coventry and West Greenwich District 29, a Republican colleague. Sherry, we were talking a little bit about Central Coventry Fire District, and I really just want to kind of put a bow on that for our listeners. That actually has been going on for 5 years. And your predecessor, Lisa Tomaso, was one of those representatives who did everything she could to stop reform from happening in that fire district. The people there were looking at a 65% tax increase. And they just didn't want to hear anything about it up there in the State House. And she was an integral part in trying to keep that tax increase and the cushy benefits and pay in place. And I am just so thankful that you came along and looked at the people in your district, the average families, and understood they needed a break. And you've been just terrific at supporting the people in Central Coventry.
Thank you.
Right?
Yes.
And I'm sure that when you were going and doing this survey, that's something that did come out. When they're talking property taxes, they're talking fire taxes as well.
Yes. Yeah, that's been clearly a big issue in the district. You know, everybody's got all kinds of ideas, but you have to really look at the situation and try to determine what the best thing to do is. It's not an easy, there's no easy answer, really. But whatever they choose to do, is what I'm going to support. If they say they don't want any more taxes, they want them to go down, then they need to be heard. That's what they want, and if they elect you to a seat, that's what you do. You don't go against their will.
And you've been a really great advocate for average families having some control over their lives, not just their money, but also their children. I know that you put in a bill on the HPV virus or vaccine.
Correct.
You want to explain a little bit about that? We actually did a program not too long ago, so hopefully people were listening to that program. But this was about parental rights.
Yes, I think the Department of Health, they just mandated it so that parents are required to get this shot in order for the kids to stay in school. Well, you know, it's the parents' right to decide what's good for their own kids. And I don't think it's right for government overreach like that to tell parents what their children should be getting for shots. I mean, this is not something that's contagious through the air. So, you know, it's something that's transmitted sexually. But really, are our kids having sex in school? Because they shouldn't be.
Hopefully
So-
not in the 5th grade.
No, no, so this is ridiculous. And that piece of legislation that I submitted was for the purpose of letting the parents know that they have the option to opt out. And it promotes transparency and good communication. And right now, I don't see that the Department of Health is interested in any of that. So,
You know, I think nobody cares about their children more than the parents of that child,
yeah,
right? And if it's a good idea, and if it's going to help their child to be healthier, better prepared, they're going to do it.
well, of course. So
Yeah.
if they're saying, you know, we don't want to do this, there's probably a reason to be concerned.
Yeah, and if the Department of Health doesn't agree, then convince them, give them the data, give them the information. Don't just mandate it because you know better than everybody else. There's a real disease in our state government right now. I think that they know better than the rest of us how we should live our lives. They know how we should spend our money. They know what we should do with our cars. They know what they are going to force us to do things with our children. We did a program, and that vaccine, though it may be good for a lot of people, is bad for a significant number. And parents need to know about those dangers before.
Yes, and that is also included in the legislation, that they should include that information when they notify the parents what the risks are with taking that vaccine.
Yeah, good ideas sell themselves, though. I think if you have a good idea and you present all the data and all the reasoning to people, if it's a good idea, they'll agree with you. The toll law, they hid the data. They didn't want to give the reasoning. They couldn't sell it to the people because it was a bad idea.
It absolutely was. The good thing on that, though, is that I think this year, the next election, I really believe this is an opportunity. People should not lose hope. I think a lot of people are discouraged because of all the things that are just pushed on us here in this state. But they should not be discouraged because this is the election year. I believe there are so many people upset with the tolls, numerous other things.
Just the direction our government is taking, but
Yes.
tolls was kind of that boil
Yes.
that was popped or lanced, right?
Yes.
It just was ugly. The way it was done, the effects on average families that it's going to have, that I think, I'm hoping that people won't forget it by November, and I'm hoping in the meantime that people stand up and reach out and say, how can I help? Can I run for office? Because we need folks to run.
Yes, absolutely. There are some new faces coming forward, and we need to continue to, I think anybody who voted for the tolls, it's time to go because it's time to work for the people. This is our opportunity, this next election, to get out there and vote in some new people, keep the ones that are good.
Like you.
We know, and you, we're on the people's side. But there's a lot of people, as we know, that are in it for self-interest. They need to go. So,
And let's just talk about that, because you ran for the first time out of the blue 2 years ago, right?
yes.
Hadn't been involved in politics, just knew that you wanted to make a difference for the people in your district. You saw things that were broken, you wanted to help fix them. How hard was it to run? Don't make it too bad now, because we're trying to talk people into stepping up.
Oh, I know. No, it's worth it. It is a lot of work. So, it's fun, though. I have to say, it's well worth the work. Well worth it. And to have the opportunity, I think, when people put their confidence in you, it feels really good. And of course, the whole idea that you could make a change, it really is possible, but not without people coming forward and being willing to step up to the plate, because we really can make change. It's there. The opportunity is there. It's wide open. Anybody can run. So
anybody can run. And I know that you had an opponent against it. It was Lisa Tommaso. She was a favorite of the speaker, so you had a tough race. And despite that, despite the money and the mailings and all that, you prevailed. And you prevailed because you were there for the average families, trying to help them.
Yes, and I will continue to stay there.
And there are more people, I'm putting a pitch in here, there are more people who can step up. You don't have to be a political wizard. You don't have to have been involved in government in the past. You just have to have that willingness to help average families to get ahead, to have secure lives. You've done a great job so far, and I'm sure that people are going to respond to that, despite that bullseye that's on your back because you voted against the toll law.
That's okay. I love the bullseye. It just challenges me to keep on working harder for the people. That's all.
All right, and you've done other things for your district, so we're going to take a break right now. We're going to talk about some of the other things that have been percolating in the State House with your help.
Last week, Providence firefighters responded to an alarm at 360 and 362 Orms Street, not far from the State House. The on-scene commander reported that 8 tenants were evacuated and that 8 firefighters were injured. The chief on the scene also casually mentioned the responding units had encountered an alligator in the bathtub of one of the apartments. Are you kidding me? When Channel 10 reporter Carrie Corrado heard this interesting detail, she must have been taken aback because answers to none of the obvious follow-up questions were included in her report. For instance, in addition to the 8 who were injured, were there any unaccounted for? Or does the current contract with the city contain any special provisions for benefits paid to officers sustaining alligator bites in the line of duty? Or maybe, when transporting an alpha predator reptile from the scene of a fire, does department procedure require the summoning of a rescue unit? Or will the chief's SUV do? Folks, maybe I could make this stuff up, but if I did, you'd never believe me. It actually went down pretty much that way. Ms. Corrado was careful to report, however, that the apartment's owner did have proper permits for keeping the alligator. Really? Were his or her neighbors aware of that reptile resident? And hey, all this went down only a few blocks from where the legislature just got through defeating a right to carry statute at the end of the recent session. Should Carrie Corrado have interviewed the pet owner to ascertain whether or not it is as hard to get a permit to carry a carnivorous amphibian as it is to assert your Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms? Look, it's probably easier to get the Snapjaw than it is to get the Long Slide 45. And that part of town can be dangerous after dark. But I think I'd advise the beast's owner to get some glue-on fuzzy ears and snout whiskers. You see, all the beware of alligator signs have recently been snapped up, so to speak, by Disney. So all that's left at Petco are the standard beware of the dog models. Look, home invaders have rights too these days. You wouldn't want to confuse anyone while they were attempting a B&E. You could get in trouble. As for keeping an alligator in your bathtub, what could go wrong? Are you kidding me?
Red team, listen up. It's Mark from the bunker. It's my listing post in the cellar of the Rhode Island State House. Yeah, I'm down here. And look, I'm hearing that Russell Moore in Go Local Prov got an article out there that says it's been a great year for reform in Rhode Island. Russell, you're a good guy. I hate to contradict you, but open your eyes. An ethics amendment passed with a poison pill in it that'll never work, okay? And legislative grants, well, they talked and they thought, and guess what? Nothing changed. What was it that Julius Caesar said? Verba non acta? I think it might have been the other way around. Anyways, term limits are still on the table. All right. And you think that's a good bet? You ought to buy some Syrian war bonds. Listen, Russell, only in Rhode Island will all this be called reform. It's Mark, from the bunker. Out.
Welcome back to Common Sense. I'm Representative Patricia Morgan, and we have with us today Representative Sherry Roberts from Central Coventry and West Greenwich District 29, a Republican colleague. Sherry, we were talking a little bit about Central Coventry Fire District, and I really just want to kind of put a bow on that for our listeners. That actually has been going on for 5 years. And your predecessor, Lisa Tomaso, was one of those representatives who did everything she could to stop reform from happening in that fire district. The people there were looking at a 65% excuse me, tax increase, and they just didn't want to hear anything about it up there in the State House, and she was an integral part in trying to keep that tax increase and the cushy benefits and pay in place. And I am just so thankful that you came along and looked at the people in your district, the average families, and understood they needed a break. And you've been just terrific at supporting the people in Central Coventry.
Thank you.
Right?
Yes.
And I'm sure that when you were going and doing this survey, that's something that did come out. When they're talking property taxes, they're talking fire taxes as well.
Yes. Yeah, that's been clearly a big issue in the district. You know, everybody's got all kinds of ideas, but you have to really look at the situation and try to determine what the best thing to do is. It's not an easy, there's no easy answer, really. But whatever they choose to do is what I'm going to support. If they say they don't want any more taxes, they want them to go down, then they need to be heard. That's what they want, and if they elect you to a seat, that's what you do. You don't go against their will.
And you've been a really great advocate for average families having some control over their lives, not just their money, but also their children. I know that you put in a bill on the HPV virus or vaccine.
Correct.
You want to explain a little bit about that? We actually did a program not too long ago, so hopefully people were listening to that program. But this was about parental rights.
Yes, I think the Department of Health, they just mandated it so that parents are required to get this shot in order for the kids to stay in school. Well, it's the parents' right to decide what's good for their own kids. And I don't think it's right for government overreach like that to tell parents what their children should be getting for shots. I mean, this is not something that's contagious through the air. So, it's something that's transmitted sexually. But really, are our kids having sex in school? Because they shouldn't be.
Hopefully not in the 5th grade.
No, so this is ridiculous. And that piece of legislation that I submitted was for the purpose of letting the parents know that they have the option to opt out, and it promotes transparency and good communication. And right now, I don't see that the Department of Health is interested in any of that. So,
I think nobody cares about their children more than the parents of that child.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And if it's a good idea, and if it's going to help their child to be healthier, better prepared, they're going to do it.
Well, of course. So if they're saying, we don't want to do this, there's probably a reason to be concerned.
Yeah, and if the Department of Health doesn't agree, then convince them. Give them the data. Give them the information. Don't just mandate it because you know better than everybody else. There's a real disease in our state government right now. I think that they know better than the rest of us how we should live our lives. They know how we should spend our money. They know what we should do with our cars. They know what they are going to force us to do things with our children. We did a program, and that vaccine, though it may be good for a lot of people, is bad for a significant number, and parents need to know about those dangers before.
Yes, and that is also included in the legislation, that they should include that information when they notify the parents, what the risks are with taking that vaccine.
Yeah, good ideas sell themselves, though. I think if you have a good idea and you present all the data and all the reasoning to people, if it's a good idea, they'll agree with you. The toll law, they hid the data. They didn't want to give the reasoning. They couldn't sell it to the people because it was a bad idea.
It absolutely was. The good thing on that, though, is that I think this year, the next election, I really believe this is our opportunity. People should not lose hope. I think a lot of people are discouraged because of all the things that are just pushed on us here in this state. But they should not be discouraged, because this is the election year. I believe there are so many people upset with the tolls, numerous other things.
Just the direction our government is taking, but
Yes.
tolls was kind of that boil
Yes.
that was popped or lanced, right?
Yes.
It just was ugly. The way it was done, the effects on average families that it's going to have, that I think, I'm hoping that people won't forget it by November, and I'm hoping in the meantime that people stand up and reach out and say, how can I help? Can I run for office? Because we need folks to run.
Yes, absolutely. There are some new faces coming forward, and we need to continue to, I think anybody who voted for the tolls, it's time to go, because it's time to work for the people. This is our opportunity, this next election, to get out there and vote in some new people, keep the ones that are good.
Like you.
We know, and you, we're on the people's side. But there's a lot of people, as we know, that are in it for self-interest. They need to go. So.
And let's just talk about that, because you ran for the first time out of the blue 2 years ago, right?
Yes.
Hadn't been involved in politics, just knew that you wanted to make a difference for the people in your district. You saw things that were broken, you wanted to help fix them. How hard was it to run? Don't make it too bad now, because we're trying to talk people into stepping up.
Oh, I know. No, it's worth it. It is a lot of work. So, you know, it's fun, though. I have to say, it's well worth the work. Well worth it. And to have the opportunity, I think, when people put their confidence in you, it feels really good. And of course, you know, the whole idea that you could make a change really is possible, but not without people coming forward and being willing to step up to the plate, because we really can make change. It's there. The opportunity is there. It's wide open. Anybody can run. So
Anybody can run. And I know that you had an opponent against it. It was Lisa Tommaso. She was a favorite of the speaker, so you had a tough race. And despite that, despite the money and the mailings and all that, you prevailed. And you prevailed because you were there for the average families, trying to help them.
Yes, and I will continue to stay there.
And there are more people, I'm putting a pitch in here, there are more people who can step up. You don't have to be a political wizard, you don't have to have been involved in government in the past. You just have to have that willingness to help average families to get ahead, to have secure lives. You've done a great job so far, and I'm sure that people are going to respond to that, despite that bullseye that's on your back because you voted against the toll law.
That's okay. I love the bullseye. It just challenges me to keep on working harder for the people. That's all.
All right, and you've done other things for your district, so we're going to take a break right now. We're going to talk about some of the other things that have been percolating in the State House with your help.
Here's another angle on a Final Friday story that Mark just covered. When the governor, Senate president, judiciary, and key community leaders approve a bill, you might think it's in the bag, especially if it gets passed in the Senate. But when it comes to approving or killing a bill, it's not about reform in Rhode Island. It's about politics. Are you kidding me? The bills in question revolve around criminal justice reform in this state. Without any changes to our current criminal justice system, particularly our probation rate, which is second highest in the country, our prison population might grow by 11% in the next 10 years. To combat this, justice reinvestment bills, championed by all those people I mentioned before, were passed in the RI Senate but killed in the House. When asked why the bills were killed, House Speaker Nicholas Mattiello said that he was never convinced that the justice bills were ready for passage this year. But an unnamed official close to him told the Providence Journal that it really comes down to quid pro quo. The source hypothesized that Mattiello wanted some bills passed over there, while they wanted some bills passed over here. And I guess this just demonstrates the power and the primacy of the Speaker of the House. What you can't say is that Mattiello didn't put in the time to reviewing these bills. In fact, he put in too much time, interestingly enough. He had scheduled a third meeting to review the bills for 3:30 a.m., and by 4:30 a.m. he was still working on it. Or was he playing chicken with the Senate? Representative Robert Craven said that the House couldn't digest the Senate's amendments on the bills before the clock ran out, and that if there were circumstances to be blamed, they probably should have paid attention to the amendments earlier. You think? Isn't this your job? You're really going to schedule things that late in the game and then flippantly brush off that you just couldn't fit it in on time? Mattiello claims he erred on the side of maintaining the status quo because he felt the bills were too soft on crime. Let's go back to that figure the Projo printed that our prison population will grow by 11% over the next 10 years. Think of that in terms of dollars the taxpayers will be charged to cover the burdened criminal justice system. We need reform. We need to start the conversation, and if you're actually going to start talking about it, instead of waiting to the last minute so that you can kill it without looking like you're killing it allegedly, then maybe don't start the conversation on such an important topic at 3:30 a.m. Are you kidding me?
Welcome back to Common Sense Rhode Island. I'm Representative Patricia Morgan, and today we've been talking with Representative Sherry Roberts, who is representing Central Coventry and West Greenwich very well. Just to put a bow on our last segment, kind of tie that up, Electric Boat, and I just think this is terrific, has been working, you've been working with them to get this program into Coventry, extended on to West Greenwich, and hopefully to all Rhode Island children, because it has tremendous promise for them to not have to go to college, but to get good skills that will give them good jobs in the future. And help Electric Boat in our defense industry at the same time. So you said it might start in the fall in Coventry?
It's expected to start in the fall, yes.
Great. Did you know that there were 2 Republican secretaries of the Navy who actually got that business, the welding skin business, into Quonset?
No, I was not aware of that.
Yes, we had 2 Republican secretaries of the Navy. One everybody knows, that's John Chafee, and the other is William Middendorf, who was a secretary of the Navy and was very instrumental in making sure that we got that submarine work in Quonset. So good news, Republicans have done wonderful things and will continue to do wonderful things for Rhode Island. There's been an issue on the table now, well, only for about two weeks, and that's the Olneyville Tunnel. Does anybody else know what the Olneyville Tunnel is? It's the 610 connector, right? I know you were fighting with me against the toll law. Do you remember there being any conversation about a tunnel in Olneyville when all that was being rammed through?
Absolutely not.
No.
Not how are they going to afford this anyway?
Not a lot of transparency. I was going to ask questions about the 610 project, but even then there was absolutely no discussion about burying the highway and capping it and putting green space and roads up above. I mean, they were seriously talking about highways underneath and streets and parks up above. This is Boston's big dig. Did you hear anything when you were in the State House? Anybody talking about such an elaborate plan?
Not at all. Nothing. Zero. Zilch.
Zilch.
So
Zilch.
now it seems like they're going to get this toll money, and now all of a sudden now they have got another expense to pay for. I mean, what's...
Well, to me it's just a bait and switch, because during that entire debate, if you want to call it that, but the ramming that toll through, they talked about bridges. We have the most deficient bridges in Rhode Island. We need tolls to fix the deficient bridges, Rhode Island. And they really soft pedaled the 610. I knew it was there. I was trying to drag information out of DOT on it, but no talk, none at all about a tunnel. And, you know, I understand that the people out there, and I really appreciate the fact that they called and they sent the emails and they raised their voices against the tolls. Now they're faced with this. It's up to $1 billion that they want to spend on this. Quite frankly, I think the big dig in Boston started small and grew to 7 times the original estimate. Were you able to go to any of the meetings, or were you at the State House this last week?
I was at the State House.
Yeah. Not a lot of reps went. I made the special, you know, I made myself get there. It wasn't easy to do because we have on the same days, funny thing, on the same days that they had these meetings, we had to be in committees.
Because it's convenient, that's why.
Not to get the word out to the people who are supposed to be making the decisions, and they have had no information session for us in the State House so that all of us could get the information. Like I said, there's a real aversion to transparency and getting data and information out to people in our state from this administration. But one of the things that's really scary to me is they were talking about it being $400 million before the law was passed. Now it's in the meeting I went to, they were talking about $550 million. In the paper today, it was $995 million, and this all happened in about 2 weeks' time. So the longer this thing stays on the table, it's going to grow. And something that's really disturbing is this tunnel idea, or the capped highway. It's 1 mile now for $1 billion. 1 mile. And the director was saying that, well, that's preliminary. If they like it, they can extend it farther into Providence, the whole tunnel idea, out into Johnston, out into Cranston. At $1 billion a mile, this could be crushing to Rhode Island. Just crushing. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, a $45 million tax increase as it is could just blossom. What do you think we should be doing as representatives to help people fight against the tunnel? Any ideas?
Well, we just need to continue to educate them, of course, about what's going on, and give them the tools to know what to do. You know, sometimes they just don't know what to do. They're probably feeling helpless at this point because our government just overrides the people's will.
You know, I'm exactly with you on that one too. We've fought so hard. People did rise up. They made the phone calls, they sent the emails, and they were slapped down. And they're asking me, what do we do? What do we do?
Well, some of this stuff I really believe can be reversed in the next election, as I was saying before. They have an opportunity. It's just that I think so many people are just not educated about what's going on, but yet they're voting, but they don't really know what's going on. There are many people who do, but not enough is what I'm saying. And they really need to pay attention to what their senator and their rep is voting on, what's going on, and take the opportunity this fall to get out there and really make some changes, vote in some new people who have obviously or clearly defied their will, because we have a real opportunity to reverse some of this stuff. It's just so unnecessary. All this stuff that's going on is just unnecessary.
It is an unnecessary burden on average Rhode Island families who are already struggling. I mean, the average household income has gone down 12% since 2008. It just didn't rebound. The number of jobs that we lost hasn't been made up. So we know Rhode Island families are in stress. And yet, they're not focusing on that in the State House. In fact, they're making it worse. The toll law is just the tip, I think, of the iceberg here. This tunnel is going to be so expensive and drag more and more money out of families. So it's replace and repeal, right?
Yes.
Replace, the people who aren't paying attention to you, right, so they can repeal these laws. And I'm going to put in a special plea to give us more Republicans and independents. Sherry has been so good to help us, but we need more of her if we're going to stop bad things from happening to Rhode Islanders. So thank you so much for coming. Thank you, Sherry, for sharing your thoughts with us, and we'll see you next week.
As I recall the early years of my education at home and at school, the first rule was to know the rules. What we could or could not do as a day of learning progressed. Now, we came to the classroom from a variety of households, but generally we were all raised in the same way Americans raised kids in the 1940s and 50s. We came to school from homes that taught us right from wrong, how to handle a fork, when to talk or not. Our manners were an important extension of our parents' standards. Anytime we were anywhere, we were expected to perform with the necessary etiquette called for in all situations. Easy? No way. We were always in some kind of trouble for forgetting to do this or that. But we gradually learned our manners. We had to become socially acceptable. When we were in the company of our friends and classmates, it was easy to get along, but when outside the bubble, it sometimes got a little difficult. Because there are traditionally 3 manner categories, each offering different challenges. You have hygiene, courtesy, and cultural norm manners. Now, the last category includes a whole host of behavior rules depending on which country you happen to be in. But we all have to know how to handle ourselves anytime we are not actually asleep. Like church etiquette, movie theater etiquette, concerts, driving, grocery stores, well, you know, it's pretty much endless. Every time we are in contact with others of the species, we are acting out our understanding of good manners. Protocol, if you would. Now, I thought my folks did a good job raising my sisters and I, with some help from the Sisters of St. Joseph. When we left school, we had all the right moves down pat. We knew right from wrong and when to hold the door open. We knew that age mattered, and we gave assistance and respect to the older folks. We knew that pregnant women had to be given any and all assistance. We knew that there was a social order, and some folks got to sit in the front row seats. The importance of understanding what etiquette demanded of us was a part of living in our world. Growing up, I was encouraged to become a Boy Scout. My first uniform. Thought I looked pretty sharp, all dressed up in that uniform. Now, I stayed at it and made it to the Court of Honor to get an Eagle medal pinned on my chest by my very own proud mom. Now, the Boy Scouts had lots of help when it came to manners. It all starts with the Scout Oath. On my honor, I will do my best to do my duty to God and my country and to obey the Scout law, to help other people at all times, to keep myself physically strong, mentally awake, and morally straight. Then, to help out even more, there is the Scout law. A Scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. Now, if you live a life according to these rules, you are perfectly positioned to succeed at almost anything. After high school, I went off to college, shifted out of my Scout uniform and into a U.S. Navy uniform. Kept that one on for the next 30 years. More protocol to learn. Naval life requires lots of things that civilian life does not. One of the new things I learned was what George Washington wrote in his book, The Rules of Civility and Decent Behavior. This one. This is the one he wrote at the ripe old age of 14. Now, he took his 110 rules from an English translation of a French book of maxims. Rule 30. In walking, the highest place in most countries seems to be on the right hand. Place yourself on the left hand of him whom you desire to honor. But if there are 3 walk together, the mid place is the most honorable. The wall is usually given to the most worthy if 2 walk together. And what do you know? The United States Navy does it just that way. If you are a junior, you walk on the left and slightly behind your seniors. George's book is a winner. I like his 110th. Labor to keep alive in your breast that very essential celestial fire called conscience. I am reminded of the pictures of the representatives of the people lying about the floor of the House of Representatives lately as they demonstrated their understanding of proper protocol. I'll be honest, when I saw the picture of the congressman who says he represents me in Congress, I was embarrassed for my state. Congressman Cicilline obviously didn't get the same training I got. The rules are the rules until they are changed. Manners are important, even for congresspersons. Thank you for watching, and God bless.